Hi everyone, it's Nick on day 4 of the Body Image Advent Challenge. I didn't manage to get a video today, and even though I went out and asked loads of people, they all said no. So as part of the challenge, if we don't get one, we've got to do one ourselves. Quite luckily it didn't fall on tomorrow, which is a girl's perspective, because I'd be a little bit done for that one. But as it's a guy's perspective of Body Image Night, it's a good chance for me to air my personal views, I suppose. Instead of giving you my views from me and my charity stuff and my work, which I'm sure you've already heard before in the many articles I've written, blogs I've posted and various other bits and pieces, I thought I'd tell everyone a little bit about my experiences of body image as an individual. I suppose you can go say as far as that I'm now 26 and I have a really, really positive relationship with my body now. There's a few things I don't like, but then again there's a few things I think everyone hates about their body. I don't particularly like my feet, but then again I don't particularly like anyone's feet. And the only one thing that terrorises me and completely terrifies me about image is the fact of I really, really like my hair. And as I get older, I am godforsakenly petrified of ever losing it. Luckily, looking at my granddad and my dad, they've still got a full head of hair, so I should be okay. But it just goes to show that no matter what kind of positive relationship you have with yourself, you're always going to have one or two hang-ups. But it's all about the way you deal with them. And you've only got to look back to when I was 16, so 10 years ago now, to see that I was a very, very different person in the way I saw myself, and I would never, ever, ever have been doing a video talking to people like I'm doing now. I suppose it's quite fair to say that I had probably more unhealthier relationship than most men will ever have with their body. I avoided going out for the sake of people seeing me. I constantly put my body through absolute hell when I was younger to try and achieve something. But looking back, I don't even know what I was trying to achieve. I can't say that the media influenced me in any way, shape or form with my really destructive behaviours I used to have, because I didn't really get caught up in the media stuff. About the only length it went to was probably looking at people on the TV, maybe bands I listened to, and that's probably why I consequently ended up having a bunch of piercings. But apart from that, my perception of image all came from me, and I'm thinking, I still don't know for sure, but I think I've always been very driven and very out to get what I want, and I think quite a perfectionist in that kind of way. You know, I've always been very driven to be successful in what I do and what I want to do, and I think it used to be like that back then. Coupled with bullying as well, I had a pretty crap time at school, which probably knocked my self-confidence for 6. And when you put all that together, it made me feel very uncomfortable about me in general, and my body image merely formed a part of this big web where there was some of me, you know, you can look at my personality. I began to hate myself in every way, shape and form, and you know, it led to a long, long time of recovering from some horrible things, which I'm not going to go, you know, really into detail about. But I can't say that any of the body image stuff and the way I saw myself was influenced by anything I'd really consumed. It was all this inner vision, and the best way I found to describe it of late is that of just wanting to be so small and so tiny that you just disappear, and to be so far or so normal that no one really realises you're there. And that was kind of how it felt growing up. As I said, you know, I've got older and it's not been easy, but I've learnt to really appreciate myself, and you know, the only things I've really got to do now is probably apologies to my hair for dyeing it so much and straightening it so much, and, you know, apologies to my body for putting it through, you know, my first 21 years of absolute hell, and, you know, to, you know, for leaving scars on myself. And, you know, there's so much, when you think about the relationship you have with your body, I've put mine through so much in such a short space of time, yet it still works fine, and that's a pretty amazing thing. Obviously that's probably more of an extreme example than most men will have, but in my professional work now, I work in a counselling environment and youth work environment with young people, and there is no doubt that the pressure is 10 times what it was when I was in school, 10 times what it was when I was growing up all the way through my teens. And they now seem to have similar pressures to women. Advertisers have started clocking onto this and are now targeting it at men as well as women. The media have started to pick up on what they consider to be a male ideal and have started plastering that all over television, magazines, everything in between. And, you know, it just wasn't like that when I was a young person. So I can understand that, you know, if I found it so hard to cope where there wasn't those pressures there, that surely with those great deal more pressure out there, that younger men are going to find it so much harder. And I really do feel sorry for the next generation coming into this, because they're under more pressure than before to achieve in not just body image, all walks of life. You know, they're supposed to be popular sports people and be on all the sports teams and have the most popular girlfriend, and, you know, there's all so much they're trying to achieve because we're getting to the point where society expects it from them. And it's just about time, you know, kids went back to being kids. And for men especially, the female body image debate has been around for a long time, so they probably have, you know, built up ways of dealing with it, whereas because it's quite new for men, I think, still don't have a clue how to deal with these feelings and insecurities around their bodies. And one thing you notice is they're certainly not talking about them, which is probably a really, really, really dangerous kind of place to come from, because I remember not talking about mine, and I remember keeping mine hidden from everyone, and it just made me hurt myself more instead of, you know, coming out clean with everything and letting someone else help me. I decided I was going to take it on myself, and I really didn't have the skills back then to deal with how I felt, and it just, you know, it really got out of hand. And my one thing on, you know, a guy's perspective for day 4 is that we do have to learn to start talking, and we have to understand that, you know, we're not going to demasculate ourselves if we talk about our bodies. We're not going to make ourselves less of a man, or, you know, people aren't going to laugh at us if we start having those conversations with the right people. Yes, you're always going to get those narrow-minded idiots out there, but you get them in everything. It's not just this topic. And I think, especially with the younger generations coming up, they're going to have to learn to be more open about these issues, because before long, they're going to get more. They're going to get more intense. The advertising's going to get worse. And if we don't learn to adapt to that, and we as men, as a you know, group of society, don't learn to deal with how we process those issues, then it's not really going to be helpful for any of us, and we're going to end up in the position that the female body image debate has ended up in for a long, long time, where body dissatisfaction got to such a peak that campaigns started popping up everywhere to deal with it. And, you know, we don't want it to get into that at this stage. We need to be looking after ourselves now instead of back then. And if I could change one thing about my experience, it would have been to talk about how I felt, and talk about how out of place I felt a lot earlier than I spoke about it originally, because, you know, it wasn't a nice time. and I needed to talk to someone. And it was a shame that the only time I talked to someone was when it was pretty much forced on me by my best friend. And, you know, who needs that? It shouldn't be a case of being forced into it. It should be a case of we're willing to open up about it. And this is a whole culture that has to change. But I believe it's possible with the right education and the right people fronting these issues. I really, really believe we can get there. So yes, that's really my day 4 little diary. I hope I've been able to articulate my whirlwind of a teenage brain well enough in this little video, and see you on day 5. Bye bye.